First of all, your kind of reaction to obviously last weekend's Six Nations couldn't have been more dramatic.
Yeah, no, listen, it was an unbelievable day of action. Yeah, yeah, I thought the Irish guys were great in terms of how they approached the game, and listen, it was a great performance, and yeah, no, delighted for all the lads involved. So, and then obviously as it played out later on in the evening, yeah, had a bit of everything that game in Paris, didn't it? It was. Yeah, listen, it's great. I thought it was a great, amazing advert for the tournament and for the game itself. There's plenty of sort of negative vibes about the game and the style of games at the moment, but listen, the last few weeks of the Six Nations have been fantastic, and teams going out with an unbelievably positive intent and mentality to play and score points, and you're seeing teams reward there. So listen, it was great. Listen, I thought it was a really, really positive weekend.
Yeah, like how positive is that for the game? We've had a mad weekend like that and teams scoring tries. I remember James Law saying back December the game felt like it was in a bit of a sort of confusing space. Like maybe some games were the most entertaining. Ty Burner kind of said similar. For having a Six Nations in the way it did, could that only be positive for the game?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that's what I said. I think it's hugely positive for the game, definitely. Our last game is probably the game that's probably most in the forefront of my mind, unfortunately, which was an 8-7 loss for us. So we're definitely keen to get out and see our guys play with a bit more positive intent now against Glasgow than we did in our last game. So there's definitely it's good to see that type of game being rewarded in the international game. So listen, that's the way we want to play. That's the way we've always wanted to play. And Glasgow, who we obviously play this weekend, will be a team very, very similar. So they play very, very similar style of rugby to what Scotland produce. And when Glasgow and Scotland, as you've seen during the Six Nations, when they play at home in particular, you see what Scotland scoring 50 points against France, which is, a huge score. And they scored some fantastic individual tries at different stages during the course of the game. So that's very much what's forefront of our minds at the moment.
Just ahead of the game this weekend, I know I said in the email earlier, Andrew Porter's integration back into training. Is there a day penciled in or a particular game where he could be expected back? Or
yeah, we'll see how he goes through training this week, and then we'll just make a call. So he's very, very close, Andrew. He's got himself in great shape now. So yeah, listen, he's doing more and more every day, which is great.
Just, I suppose, on those injuries, you're talking about Andrew making good progress, but I suppose, and you've talked about it with those who've had to step in there, how's that process gone, and I suppose how valuable is we saw how Tom O'Toole stood up, particularly at the weekend. It really is something else for these young guys to come up. Tom, not so, haven't been around a bit, but to come up and take their opportunity the way they have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like so Andrew's been out since November for us. Came back from November injured, came back with us, picked up that unfortunate injury in the lead into our La Rochelle game. Which, listen, it's disappointing. He's a huge player for us, Andrew, and has been for a decent chunk of time now. And that's on top of, say, Paddy McCarthy got injured in that La Rochelle game as it played out. And Jack Boyle then got injured in the Connacht game. And they're all significant injuries. So on the flip side of that, then that opens the door and window of opportunity. You touch on Tom O'Toole from an Irish context, but from a Leinster context, we've had Jerry Kerr, who's come in, made his debut for Leinster during the course of the season, back in just before November series against Zebra, and then Champions Cup. He obviously comes on in the second half when Paddy McCarthy went down in that game, and he's thrust into Champions Cup action, which was a huge game, big crowd, all the rest. So been fantastic for Jerry. Alex Usnov, again, another player who's made his debut for Leinster during the course of this season. And you're seeing a young player, Alex Usnov, again, who's come through the system in the sub academy, Irish 20s, and yet it's the start of his progression. In our last game, the two lads played, and yeah, listen, they're growing all the time, which is fantastic. So it's just so important that we continue to keep investing in some of the younger guys. Even, lots of talk about the senior games during the Six Nations, but listen, we're glued to the 20s games as well, and the good chunk of players that Leinster have representing Ireland at 20s as well. So, and a lot of those guys will be academy players that we're also tracking. So good to see some of those front rowers go well at the weekend as well. So and that's the cycle, isn't it? Like it's great to see. We have to be patient with some of these younger players that we have coming through. As I touched on at the start of the piece, we're bitterly disappointed with how we performed probably as a group in our last outing. Listen, it was a very, very difficult night away in Cardiff, which was a tricky place to go at the best of times, and we're missing a good chunk of players through the Six Nations, some injuries as well. And you've got some younger players stepping in there. And listen, it's a learning. They lose a game by the tightest of margins. If you get up by a point, you don't have the same level of scrutiny sometimes on the performance. So it was important that we went away and learned as much as we possibly could from that game. So this week, as I said, it's a new week, and we get to try and put some of that into practice now off the back of watching some of the Six Nations games and the direction, the way the game is going. So, but yes, long-winded answer. The front rowers are definitely a big part of the development of all the players in the group, really, essentially.
If I can stay with front rowers, Andrew, you're saying he is making good progress. Do you feel he'll be back for those crucial interposts that are coming up?
Yeah, he's tracking like he should be back there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he's pretty much partaking in everything in training at the moment. So, which is fantastic.
A final quick one for me, and again, another man who's been unfortunate with injury, Hugo Keenan. How's that come?
He's good, yeah. And again, Hugo's training fully at the moment as well. So we're hoping that he will feature this week, or if not this week, very, very soon. But it's great again to have having the likes of Hugo, back, having some of those guys, Hugo hasn't played at all since the Lions, you know what I mean? So it's like, when you lose a player on the flip side, listen, we're getting a couple of guys back now, which is amazing as well.
Just finally for me, if I can, is there a temptation, given your position in the table and given how important a game this is, to kind of try and get some of those guys who ordinarily wouldn't play straight off the back of the Six Nations straight into action here?
Yeah, we communicated pretty well over the last couple of weeks, and some guys will get some time off this week. I think all the teams will be doing things slightly differently. But yeah, listen, we've a huge run of games now. It's a very tough game against Glasgow. See, they're top of the table at the moment, so we need to make sure we do whatever we can to prepare as well as we possibly can this week to give ourselves the best chance in the game. Next week against Scarlets, again, we haven't played a home game in quite some time. This pre-Six Nations, a game against Edinburgh, and then we play Edinburgh game, which again, it's a knockout game. So it's this run of 3 games. You win your last 16 game, you're into a quarter final. But I think probably the big message for us is it's just 1 week at a time at the moment. So, and just the genuine excitement of this run of games that we have. And listen, every team builds and builds and builds to get to this point of the season where they want to be, still competing in both competitions. We're very fortunate that we're still very much fighting on both fronts as well. And the whole squad is going to be hugely important during this period of games. So, but yeah, listen, we're excited. We had a few guys back in the building this week, which is good. We'll have more guys back in next week, and then everyone will be geared towards the knockout stages then after that.
Can I just ask a quick one? Hi Leo, is Harry Byrne in contention for this week? I know he was at that open training session.
Yeah, Harry. Yeah, we'll see how the week goes out for how it plays out for him. But yeah, listen, he trained fully with us last week, which was pleasing. So listen, we'll make some calls as the week goes on. But yeah, listen, he's tracking pretty well at the moment, Harry. But it's good. Sam is back as well this week, and even we've Kieran back in the building. So we'll make some calls as to what we do with that gang. Good competition.